Can we have the roll call?
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner West? Here. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Nacida? Commissioner Crocker? Here. Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw? Commissioner Norris? Here. Commissioner Walters? Here. Chair Slack?
Here.
Okay, citizens' comments. Do we have any? Aside? No citizens? Okay. This thing keeps moving on me, it seems. Future agenda items.
I guess
Commissioner Neely.
I guess at one point or another I would like to invite the Rivers group back.
Which group? I'm sorry.
Rivers.
Oh, the Rivers. Okay.
We got it.
Mr. Patterson is.
We are working on that. In fact, actually, Mr. Janik has put the draft of the development agreement together. We shipped that to the Rivers the end of last week. We're waiting to hear back from them, and if we have something we can talk about, we'll probably have that on your next agenda, which we're looking at the 17th. So it'll depend whether we have any consensus there.
Commissioner.
I think we want to have an
North.
executive committee meeting before then. That was my request. So I'm hoping we can get that scheduled.
That together as well.
Okay.
Anything else?
For future agenda items?
Yes.
I would like to invite the new owners of the Oregon City Shopping Center to come and invite them. I don't know if they're even interested, but if they're interested in chatting, I'd like to know.
Can't hear. Is the
I'm sorry. I was making a suggestion that the Urban Renewal Commission invite the owners of the new owners of the Oregon City Shopping Center to come and talk with us about what their intentions are.
We'll see if we can sort that out. My understanding is that is still in the process of closing, but we'll see if we can find out and invite whoever.
Anything else? Okay, adoption of the agenda. Anything that needs to be revised on the agenda? Okay, moving right along, we have, this screen just keeps moving on me. I don't know why. I keep looking down to the next item, and whoosh, it goes out of my reach here. So anyway, we'll deal with it. Okay, we're looking at general business, item 5A, request from CCLLC for amendments to Cove DDA to extend contingency period 2 from April 15th to July 15th for sections 5.27, 5.214, and 5.217. Okay. Amendment to Cove DDA.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, and I'm going to have Mr. Tyler and Mr. Darrell talk with you about this. Let me just give you a couple of quick comments. As you recall, when we entered into the development agreement, there were 2 contingency periods. There's contingency period 1, and it had a number of preconditions with it. And as I recall off the top of my head, I think that was February the 15th. I think it was the date on that. And I'd have to look to make sure on that date. But the next contingency period is contingency period 2, and that is April the 15th. As you will see, and you have at your place or on your packet this evening, is you have an update on where we're at with each of those preconditions, and you will see that all the preconditions for contingency period 1 were met. We have been working on the preconditions for contingency period 2, and we expect to meet all of those with the exception of 3, and we have a request from CCLLC for an extension of the time frame from April the 15th to July the 15th. Those involve the land use approvals, the building permits, and then the parking lot, and really on those, it's just physically impossible to get those done before April the 15th. So I'll have Mr. Darrell and Mr. Tyler chat with you about that.
Evening. Is this working? I don't know. Fine. It's good to be back once again. Seems like we're here quite often. The update that we'd like to go through is through the DDA, and then give you an opportunity to ask any questions. There's been some unique things that have happened here in the last few days that I think we can update you on. But starting out with the review of the DDA, we all know that we have closed on the two properties. Parker, the city acquired the Glacier piece and also the Parker North piece, which was the 1.65 acres and the 1.82 acres, and the Parker Pond Phase 1 was acquired by Sladen. The investment by the city was $3 million, and ultimately coming up is the next round, which would be starting Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the infrastructure. On contingency period 1, which went from the execution of the DDA through January 12th, we have completed all of these items. The master plan was approved, Phase 1 and 2 infrastructure was approved. The land use amendments, which changed from the Kaiser program to the apartments, was approved. There were no appeals filed. The city was able to secure its line of credit. Sladen closed on the Parker Phase 1 property. The Glacier contract was, there's no default. It was assigned to the URA, and the URA actually closed on that property. Phase 2 of the Parker land was assigned to the URA, and that was closed. The agency secured the fee simple for those little pieces that weren't within the agency, and that was accomplished. The financials were approved, and the agency approved the public bidding exemption. And even though that was an exemption, we are still, as I think we've said before, going out to public bid, and that will be the case with all the subcontracts. On contingency period 2, we have yet to accomplish, and we will prior to the 15th, finish the GMGC. That contract we have out to our legal. It was submitted to us by the contractor. We're going through that. We submitted with this package a letter showing that they have the bonding capacity. Yes.
I hate to interrupt. We don't have our gummy bear jar with us tonight, but could I request that you not speak with acronyms? And I don't know what GMGC means.
That's a construction management general contractor.
Because there are some people in the audience that are not going to have any idea what that means.
Certainly. No, I can appreciate that.
Thank you.
So on that contract, we're having our legal as Clackamas Cove LLC review that. In your packet tonight, there was a letter from the bonding entity showing that the capacity is there to bond. Then we'll have to get an easement from the city to do the work. That won't be anything other than just a basic straightforward easement. 5.2.12. We have an agreement with ODOT. I signed that agreement, I believe, yesterday. Went back to ODOT and has come to the city for signatures. Once the city has signed it, then that will be accomplished. The basics of that was that they required, when we switched from Kaiser to the apartments, they asked for another $20,000, so we've committed to that. Then on the agency approval of the public investment budget, that budget has been submitted to me. I've reviewed part of it. We're going back and forth with the contractor. Probably within the next week to 2 weeks, we should have that for the city to review and approve. All of those items within that category will be done by April 15th. The two primary areas that we want to get the extension for is the apartments. Working very diligently moving forward with that effort, and that is the Sladen Group. They have brought in all of the entitlements entities. We've got the architect, the engineer, the civil engineer, the geotech, landscape architect, all have been hired. When we go to this next slide here, I think it shows each of these entities, the civil engineer, the architect, the structural, landscaping, land use consultant, Those add up to about $240,000. The DEQ requirements for the prospective purchaser agreement, that has moved forward, that has been secured. The next step when you go after that is to do a feasibility study. That's been completed and was turned in last Friday to DEQ. That goes through and states what do you have to do to, in fact, remediate any of the issues within the site. And after you they finalize that, then they'll issue a record of decision, and the record of decision will probably come in the middle of May or April, maybe a little bit later, and it says that if, in fact, you incorporate all of these items which you've designed, then we will give you a no further action letter. And that's something that's absolutely mandatory when you go to the lender. The lender will not want to go onto a site that doesn't have that if, in fact, there's been a PPA. So we've been pushing that forward, and that should be done shortly. And I think the reason for showing this particular slide is to discuss that, you know, it's not like we've been sitting on the sidelines. We're actually working very diligently to get this work done, but it's just been impossible timing-wise. So we've got a total here of probably $600,000 on top of the $5 million we've already put in that has been committed going forward with the project. And then kind of stepping backwards here, the two other items which we're asking for an extension on is the Tri-City 99-year lease. Tri-Cities has started their intergovernmental agreement. They have supposedly working on a draft. It has been 3 or 4 months that we've been talking with them about getting it. That's something which the city is working in concert with them, and we're pushing them. Once that's in hand, then we can do this joint use agreement, because the parking, which is directly across from the offices in the central area of the project, will be an opportunity for both public use and for private use. Public for whenever we do special events at the site, or just people wanting to come out and enjoy the water. Supporting reasons for extending the 5.2.14, the city is moving forward. It looks like we actually missed one item here. Well, that's the commitment we've made on the 5.2.7, which is the apartments. There are the 3 things that have to happen under the apartments. We have to be able to record a loan. We have to have a permit for the foundations. What's the third one there? All the land use approvals. So those are all moving forward, and our expectation would be to have those prior to the July date, with the intent of July 15th actually kicking off the construction work. On the 2 other items, the Tri-Cities, the city's working with the Tri-Cities, so are we, and the joint use agreement is something that will be pretty perfunctory, can be done very quickly after we get the lease. I think one of the bigger things, I think we passed a separate sheet out because this might be a little hard to see, but this shows the time frames. The ROD, which is a record of decision, should be in the May, June time frame, which would be coming from DEQ. That gives us the basis for saying, all right, if you implement these remedial actions on the apartment site, then you will ultimately get an NFA, a no further action letter. That's the piece of paper that ultimately the lender will require, as long as they know that the design criteria is within the design that we start with, then we'll get the NFA. So that's all online. Under the land use approvals, we expect to be able to pull a permit for the foundations by the July 15th date, and we'll have completed all of the design elements of the apartments and gotten that through the land use portion. Under construction of the apartments, kicking that off at the same time frame in July, it'll be a 10 to 12 month process to actually build that. If we're starting the infrastructure, which that is the expectation at the same time, it might take a little longer because there will be a 3 to 4 month lead time to get the infrastructure in place and actually move the dirt around and be able to start construction. But we'll be able to go forward and pull the permits as required on the DDA. The Phase 1 and Phase 2 infrastructure, those plans have been through the city. The expectation is that we would actually break ground the same time as we would on the apartments and move forward with that. So that's basically on schedule. Then the public parking, that takes the 99-year lease and the joint use agreement. Is there any questions on that part of it? Because that's a lot of information. Okay. The balance of these slides are basically just kind of a recap of what's there physically and visually. This is a little Google Earth with actual models dropped into it just to get a feel for it. On the left side of the screen is the apartments. You see a total of 10 buildings there. Then we have the condos directly in front of us in the light green, and then in the yellow are the office buildings, and at the far back side is the mixed-use building. Looking at it from different visuals. This is a recap on everything that's going in, including the water sports centers, the moving of the sheriff, and putting in the canoe launch. Kind of the same kind of a visual, just a little bit of a 3D look. This kind of recaps the total. The apartments we're actually looking at, Sladen is looking at incorporating more 3-bedrooms than 2-bedrooms, which will drop the number count, but the gross value will still be there in terms of the city's need to have that increment. The market is dictating more 3-bedroom units than we had originally designed into the product, so that might drop down a bit from the 220 units. Condos, we've got the 180 still there, the 80,000 square feet of office. We've had continuing conversations with Willamette Falls since they were acquired by Providence. Providence basically is the big player there, and they are making decisions on where they want to spend capital funds within the next 2 months. Supposedly would get back to us. The Willamette Falls, Russ Reinhardt, president, likes the site very much, but once again is now, kind of a subsidiary of Providence. So that decision is kind of being held out there. We would like to see that move forward on that basis, but we don't have anything that says that it's anywhere near a firm deal. On the mixed-use building, that has the option of going with the yacht club approach or actually going with a single or double user. Master plan shot again, and then the phasing. I think we're all familiar with the phasing. We just kind of recap that. Everything in the green and the yellow, and even below those, the brown, the purple, the blue, and the pink there, that's all phase 1 and phase 2. The green is phase 1, the yellow is phase 2. That's what the city is going to be supporting with the next investment of $7 million. So that would be started in the July date. We had an issue. We actually went out and sat down with the city. We had an approval to actually cut trees. The thing that we had to have was an erosion control permit. We worked with the Public Works group, got that erosion control permit, and went out and started actually cutting some of the trees. There was a protest to DEQ under a C-1200 permit, which is an erosion control permit, which we would have acquired for the overall grading, but not for the trees. They felt like there was going to be some disturbance to the grounds, so I talked with them and told them as of today that we will shut that down. We will not move forward with any of that until we actually break ground on the overall project. They want us to remove some of the siltation fences that were out there, and they were actually put in place to mark an area where we didn't want any contractors to move trees or hit trees, and it wasn't actually a siltation fence, and it wasn't installed as one. But when somebody looked at it and said, well, this isn't installed right, it's not a siltation fence. Well, we said, we'll take everything out and we'll just wait until we get everything accomplished with the DEQ. Unfortunately, some people thought that, well, we're out there jumping the gun and actually moving forward without permits. That was not the case. We spent a lot of time, at least 3 meetings here in the city saying, what do we need? We purchased $37,000 worth of biofiltration items out of I think it was South Carolina, North Carolina, and brought those in. DEQ does not like those, doesn't want us to use them, so we'll be using them somewhere else on the site. But the intent was to basically show not only the commission and the city that we were committed to moving things forward, because this was a $100,000 bill, $99,000 to do this work without having any support or financial resources from the $7 million, which it would have, in fact, incorporated. We said, all right, so that we hit this nesting season correctly, which is the end of the nesting season is March 15th, we'll get the work done. We'll pay for it ourselves, and we'll get reimbursed later. That accelerated process has created some conflicts, so we said, all right, we'll stop. So that's shut down now. The intent is to go back out and start it in July, when we actually start the infrastructure work. August is the end of the nesting season, so we've sat down with our construction people, and we said, all right, let's just not go out and do the mass grading at day one of breaking ground. Let's do undergrounds. Let's do other things on the site that will actually move us forward, and when the nesting season's over, we'll come back and do those trees. So we've resolved that issue, and it probably could have been designed that way at the outset. We were a little concerned with the nesting. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have any conflicts there, but in retrospect, it probably would have been best just to wait until everything was finalized. So that's kind of the basis of the tree program. Phase 3 shows two things, which would be the apartments and the offices. We have, as you know, the offices are kind of on hold till we bring a player in. We have not gone out to the overall brokerage community. Usually we like to be very selective and pick those people that we feel will be compatible on this type of project. We've talked with 3 different entities so far. We've taken a couple of them down to very close. But we'll still be working on that, and probably within the next 3 months, if we don't have a secured, we'll go out to the brokerage community and put it out as an opportunity. The apartments will break ground on the 15th. We'll pull the foundation permits and be in a position to move that forward. These are the apartments. As you can see, they're a very nice garden style. This iteration of design is moving forward with some of the other requirements of the city. So there'll be some modification to that, but that'll all be approved through the city. Some of the elevations. Overview again of just the phase 3, which would be the office right in the very center, coming up to that. And this design needs some additional work also. The city does require that entries be facing the street. This does not have a facing of the street. So the iterations, when we get to the final DDP, which is what?
Detailed development plan.
Detailed development plan, we'll actually make those changes. Sign. And then just some of the other areas where we've done waterfront type restaurants. This parcel here is in the colored area there, the blue. That is the piece that the Tri-Cities would like. It's about 22,000 square feet, and it's part of the negotiations for securing their 2.5 acres. They don't plan on building anything there. They just felt like it was too close to their administrative buildings that they will be building and wanted it as a little buffer area. They'll be planning that out. So that would be a dedication of fee simple by the city to Tri-Cities. And then, in turn, we would be picking up the 2.5 acres for the public and private parking. This is the trade-off here. The yellow is what they would like to have, and the blue is what we would like to have. It's a pretty nice trade when you consider the physical design. But what it really does, it promotes the office, and it gives us an opportunity to do unique things for the public. When we did the Oswego Point project, we built the amphitheater. It was absolutely overloaded. They ended up having to bring in buses from off-site. In this case, we won't have that conflict, hopefully. There's 276 spaces here, so that's quite a few. Plus, we have the road parking, and we have parking up here at the very end by the North Park, where the amphitheater could be. This is the phase 4, which would be the start of the condos, buildings 1 and 3 and 4. And that could swing depending upon what's happening in the financial market. It is our expectation from everything that we've seen that 2010 is going to get burned up with still a tough economic time, and probably 2011. Our projection would be to start it as soon as possible. We don't really see a paycheck until we start the condos, so we have a real incentive to move that forward, and we will do it as soon as the market, in fact, gives us the opportunity. And if you recall, under the DDA, we have a 4-year time frame to do that. If we don't perform in that time frame, then we lose our total investment. So we have a real good incentive for making sure that we move it forward. We'll do that as timely as possible. These are just the additional condo buildings, which is another 2 buildings. Under the DDA, we have the right, if in fact we're mandated by the lending institution, we can break those 2 buildings into 1 building. Quite often that'll happen in tougher times where they'll want you to put out less product. It's the same thing as on the apartments. That's being built in 2 phases. An additional complement of the condo buildings. A front elevation of the condos, going up a little closer. They're well articulated, a lot of variance on the front elevations. I think that they'll actually be a very good-looking building. We'll be putting in a water source out in front of them so that you won't hear the constant roar of the freeway. There'll be triple pane glass on the freeway side. We have built projects like this in the past where we've been not only on the freeway but on a railroad track, and we can actually handle that sound. But when you're driving up, it's nice to have that additional sound influence there. Then on the mixed-use building, we had looked at alternative uses there. We had talked to a retirement entity that looked at it. We've talked about doing the office, which gets up to about 70,000 square feet with a couple of restaurants. And we've talked about doing a combination of a smaller restaurant in concert with a yacht club type, where people could actually bring their boats inside the building and have the marina out front and actually have a very nice program on that basis. This is that building as it's designed now. It shows 2 restaurants at both ends with the parking structure underneath. The unique thing about this site is that it's a very degraded site, and that there's been so much brought onto that piece. So when we did borings and diggings in that area, it's just full of garbage, not garbage per se, but concrete, old things. We'll end up having to probably take most of that off-site as we take it down. It currently is at about 32-foot elevation. We'll have to take it down to about 22. And then when you take and rebuild it, you have to go vertical with probably a 2-stage platform, probably in the vicinity of $4 to $4.5 million to build that, which is basically the value of the dirt. So I think, as you recall from the DDA, that as a city-owned piece, when we bring it to market, will not actually have a value. The value will be in building the structure, and then that gives somebody the opportunity to build a building on top of it. So when you get into this suburban setting like this, you can't afford to have a parking structure. It just doesn't pencil out. But it still will be an opportunity because we'll work with the dirt as the negative part of that financial model. Views, rear view, the opportunity to, given that we'd have a restaurant there, to bring boats in. And this was looking at an alternative use as a yacht club where we could actually have a combination of food service, servicing of the cleaning up of a boat, and actually having it available for somebody when they wanted to pick it up. I talked with the guy in Florida, which isn't Portland by any means, but he had done 9 of these and very successful. It was just funded for another $200 million to do them up and down the coast. And the idea is you belong to this club and you can actually move up and down the coast with your boat. So it's been a very successful thing there, and there's a couple of them done in this community, so it has that potential for being a nice opportunity. And looking down from the north end to the south, looking at the pathway, and as you recall, there was issues and questions about the size of this path. We have built them at Oswego Point at 8 feet. We did them at 12 feet over in the Columbia. This one we're pushing up to 20 feet. Mainly because it will be a very, very public area, an opportunity to actually bring vehicles out there for an antique boat show, antique boats, other things which the city would like to do. And in the case of Lake Oswego, they actually brought on a person that did nothing but plan around the project there, the amphitheater, and the opportunities that will be here. So And it was a volunteer's position, and it worked out very well. They were very active. The little water sports center, which we look at as primarily for education of kids, having the yachts, not the yachts, but the kayaks down there, in a place where people can actually leave those kayaks. The Oswego Point kayaking now is sponsored by and used by 3 high schools, a very, very active program, so it worked out really well. Marinas, which are not a mandate from our point and actually not a profit center to us, but becomes more of a complement to the overall project visually and just for the activities. So we would actually build those out as a requirement for not only people that are living there, but for third parties. When the Phase 1 and Phase 2 are completed, there won't be any buildings on the left side of the visual here. So we'll have basically a graded out area that will be landscaped and will be what in fact will be a very beautiful park. So that is the opportunity while we're waiting for the market to turn around on the condos. That's the extent of the presentation. I'm going to take any questions.
Please requested.
Your button. Okay, Commissioner Neely.
I'll come to give you the opportunity to respond to me personally and on an email that I sent out. You've already talked about the 1200C permit DEQ, and that you in fact will not be cutting down any trees until probably August when the nesting season is over. I'd like to follow up on that particular point. The intent of the establishment of the esplanade and also the landscaping, that would occur by the end of when, do you think, in the scenario that you're now talking about in terms of the tree cutting?
If you, I don't know if we got this independent one here that was not, it was supposedly given to you separately. If you look at the next at the bottom, a chart there with this separate piece. It shows the infrastructure starting in July, middle of July. That will take approximately 12 months to do that work, and it might actually kick up to 14 months. It's a very extensive, grading operation, and every time you get into moving dirt, there's always something that pops up, so my expectation will be between 12 and 14 months.
The plantings would, do you think, occur? Do you have any feeling for when the plantings would occur? The reason I'm asking, of course, there are certain periods of time where you're going to have your best establishment of the plants.
Yes. Well, that if we're looking at 12 months, that would be in July through August in the planting. Ordinarily, on the contractual relationship, we have a warranty on the materials for at least a year. So if there is something that's extraordinary that happens in terms of a heat event or whatever, we have that assurance that will be backed up.
Oftentimes, people look at fall plantings, and of course, August would be a little early for that.
It might be necessary, subject to third-party consultants to say, all right, let's withhold this, and this, and place them at a little later date. So it won't be done just a matter of let's get the job done. It'll be done on a timely basis and correctly.
Another question I had in the email that I sent you had to do with the really we'll call it the lobe area, the area that's directly across from the Oregon City Shopping Center, where you'll be removing the dirt, you said, bringing it down from 32 to 22 feet. And this is the offset material that will actually be used for fill in the apartment complex. Is that correct?
It's not so much that it'll be used as fill, but it'll be used as cut and fill balance.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. The problem with the materials there is that they are really degraded.
Yeah, that's what I said, the offset, that you actually probably will move it out, but bring in other material.
That's right, exactly.
And so that meets all your fill, that area meets all your fill requirements for the apartment site then?
No, it does not.
Okay, I didn't think
the
so.
North Park, and let me see if I can get to a slide here that. Two areas, this area here, which is the North Park, and this is the property that you're talking about. Those will be major areas for borrow that will be used not only over here, but across here. You get, when you take and do the grading along the waterfront here, right now, as we all know, it's pretty vertical. What we want to do is create not only an access opportunity, but a correct stability factor, and in pulling that back at 3 to 1, it brings it back right up to the top of and the edge of the path. We'll be able to put in probably 5 times the amount of plantings that are currently there. Ultimately, in the long term, it'll be a very spectacular setting for the amount of materials that'll be in there. That'll actually look great. So that area creates a bunch of materials that get rolled back up into this area where the condos are. Now, the condos really aren't at 52 elevation for the living quarters on the finished floor of the dirt there, because we have a parking structure, and that takes it up another 12 feet. So we're using the parking structure for a area where the water could actually infiltrate that, so it does not become a need for additional materials. Site has been very tough to balance. As you know, we spent before, 3 months ago, we had $600,000 just into the engineering to figure out how to manage this dirt. We have done other projects, very high-end projects, up to $3 million condominium units where we've done exactly the same thing. You would think, well, maybe there's a marketing problem. Do you want to say, well, your garage might get flooded? It has not been a marketing problem. If there is an extraordinary event, you usually have enough time, you take your car out, and then it becomes a cleanup problem. So all of these units along here do have subterranean parking.
The extension, coming back to the mixed-use area, you show as Phase 1 all the area that actually, I'll say, proceeds north of that site all the way out to the area where that old pump site is, Gladstone water facility. But actually, you don't have any landscaping plans or so forth in that area. The area that you're calling Phase 1 on that west side is simply in the mixed-use building area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what I understood.
This combination of the peninsula and this area are all left in native. When we reviewed all of the past documentation and we did our own inventory, this was considered a very good environmental area. This was degraded and fair, poor to fair. This was considered very good. At the outset 4 years ago, we actually had some floating homes out here, and I think that you, Doug, brought up the fact that it was a nesting den, et cetera, so we removed that. And since that time, we understand the area now. There will not be anything going on in that spot.
The third query I had from you in the email, and I think you discussed it, but the third point had to do with discussions we had, and you've had emails to that effect, of the reuse of the woody material I didn't go into the DDA specifically, but I understand they are in terms of conditions of the development, that, in fact, at least 50% of the woody material would be used on site for reuse. Is that correct?
That's right. Bill prepared a conditional assignment, and that was a condition precedent to us actually doing the assignment of the I think it was both Parker and probably Glacier. We agreed to that. I executed that document, and it said that we would save at least 50%. I think you had annotated it. We made that incorporated into it, and so it isn't quote-unquote in the DDA, but it's pulled in by the fact that it was a condition of one of the items within the DDA. And Bill might want to comment on that.
Sure, and I believe Mr. Darrow is correct. This issue came up at one of the assignments, one of the pieces, and we brought, as a result, we included that in the assignment. So it's an agreement that's part of the whole package.
Those are the questions I had.
Commissioner Nocita.
Two questions, Mr. Darrow. First question regarding your financing for the apartments. On the agenda, there's a document for a loan from Wells Fargo. Have you sought financing from any other institution to this date?
Let me get the parties down correctly. We brought Sladen into the project with us for one primary reason, both for financial support and because they have a history of doing a lot of apartments. And they're unique in that respect. We talked with Trammell Crow, we talked with several of the major developers across the country about here's a spectacular site. We have an opportunity here to do something extraordinary as an overall project. None of them wanted to play. There is not financing in the market right now for apartments unless you have a very unique relationship. Sladen has that relationship. They've done several projects. And one of the reasons you say, well, that's great to have the relationship, but it really comes down more to writing the check. Right now, you cannot get this typical, 80-20 type loan. You can't. We used to get 100% financing. Now it's down to where you've got to come up with 30 to 40 to even 50% of the equity. Sladen is prepared to do that. They have a long-standing relationship with Wells Fargo. This is not a commitment by any means, but it just shows that they are in the wings, prepared to review it. They've actually gotten part of the package so far. When you go through the typical due diligence of a lender, they not only want to see what you're going to build, they want to know you have all the entitlements, they want to know that you have all the infrastructure, they want to know that you are going to, in fact, be able to pull it out of the ground, and that it'll be a successful project. That requires feasibility studies, that it requires an appraisal. Those are all moving forward. So the intent would be to have this in place. It's a requirement. We cannot start phase 1 and phase 2 of the infrastructure until we have that loan recorded. So it's not a minor thing on our agenda. It will happen.
That wasn't my question, though. I asked if you had actually applied to any institution for a loan.
I answered it by saying that...
You answered that Sladen's a great partner, but I asked you if you had applied to any bank for financing.
No, my answer was that they have a relationship. You don't go out knocking on a bunch of doors these days looking for financing because you won't find it. You have to have a relationship. You actually have to have been doing business. They don't... most of the banks aren't even loaning, let alone bringing in new customers. So my answer to your question was they have a relationship. There was not additional people sought because they aren't out there. And if you have a relationship, having done this for 45 years, you don't go out knocking on doors. You bring your best player to the table. That's what they've done.
And I think you're still avoiding my question.
I said no.
The answer is no.
No, I answered no.
One other thing relative to that I think is important for the community is that Sladen builds for their own account. They don't build apartment complexes to just roll them over like some developers do. And the reason that makes a difference is because if you're going to be an owner for the long term, you think about things about quality and about maintenance and how long things will last. So it's important for the community to know that that particular builder-developer will be there for the long run.
I have another question for city staff. I'm really curious about the issuance of our city erosion and sedimentation erosion permit. which I guess has been issued. I guess here's my question. Mr. Darrow has indicated that the fencing that was placed within the cove was construction fencing not intended to serve the purpose of sedimentation control. So my question is, what in fact did our erosion control permit require? And if this is not serving the purpose of sedimentation control, this orange fencing, what was the permit? What was the basis of granting the permit?
And I apologize, Commissioner Nocita, I missed the beginning of your question. The basis for granting the...
I'll just repeat what I asked. That's okay. Mr. Darrow has indicated that the fencing that is in the cove now was placed there not for purposes of sediment control, but to demarcate where the limit of the work would be. It's not sediment fencing. Okay? We've granted a permit for erosion, and I guess unlike this 1200C permit, they can't remove trees until ours actually does regulate tree cutting apparently, and the erosion that comes from that. I just don't know if that's not sediment control fencing that's in the cove right now. Why did we grant the permit? What is the basis for us granting a city erosion control permit?
Annotate my answer to your question. When I said the orange fencing, that was only a portion of what was put in. There was also filtration logs that were being put in, which we paid $37,000 for to bring in from out of state. They were being put in, were not totally in, when the DEQ guy said, we don't want to see that there, we want you to remove it. Okay. So that was, as of yesterday, we stopped all the work, and we have in fact instructed them to take that out. The city has a very formal approach. We did a full design, we reviewed it with the city. It included a number of things that were required, and I'm sure they can respond to your question, but I wanted to just at least annotate what I had said.
Has to the city's perspective, have all of the requirements of our city erosion permit been put into place?
No, we were waiting for the second layer of erosion control to be placed along the cove itself.
Okay. Then my question would be, if you can't cut trees under our city erosion permit, and the requirements of the erosion permit have not been put in place yet, why has there already been tree cutting commenced?
Our concern was the tree cutting around the cove, right near the water line. We indicated that the trees upside on the glacier site, completely separate from the cove, could be taken down.
Without the erosion control permit?
Yes. The erosion control permit was for the dropping of the trees or the limbing of the trees directly adjacent to the water body.
Limbing of the trees directly adjacent to the water body.
So everything on the cove itself, on the actual water body, that 20 to 25 foot existing vegetation on the bank.
Okay, let me make one last follow-up question then regarding both of these permits. Mr. Darrow, you have indicated that no tree removal will take place prior to the end of the nesting season. Correct? Okay. Does that include limbing as well? Will no limbing of trees take place prior to the end of the nesting season because birds build nests on limbs?
In talking with the DEQ personnel yesterday and today, the request was made, well, if we are to limb the trees and drop them down, clean them up, would that be acceptable? He said, yes, that would be acceptable as long as you're not moving any major equipment in. I said, well, what if we were running a rubber-tired picker from the path. He said that would be acceptable. And I said, well, you know, I really don't think this is going to work, because you drop a big limb, it's going to disrupt the property, so there can be no disruption. So as of that conversation, I said, let's just stop. We're not going to do anything, because I don't want to be out there and doing something and a subcontractor makes a mistake, somebody sees some erosion that it's caused with a big limb, and then we get shut down, and then it becomes a public issue. So the idea is to, exactly what I said, we'll stop. We will not do anything on the trees.
Thank you.
Commissioner West,
I just have a couple questions.
you need to get your mic over close, please.
Okay, just a couple questions. And I think I misunderstood you, but did I hear you say that apartments were being phased in?
Yes, apartments are being done in 2 phases.
Okay, and tell me the timing of those then.
Well, the July date is when we need to record the construction loan and need to pull the foundation permit. So that would be the timing for Phase 1. That'll be approximately 100 to 120 units. And then the second phase will follow directly thereafter. Ordinarily, when you do large projects, unless it's a very extreme time, we built thousands of apartments ourselves, we will phase them, and what you're trying to do is to get enough units filled up to 50 to 75% so that the lender will allow you to go to the next round. So that's the intent.
The second thing is, Commissioner Neely called to my attention. So the peninsula with the yellow dot and all the green. So you're not going to do anything with that? You're going to leave the invasive species in there, the ivy and the blackberries, not redo the path, or?
When I said not do anything, I meant not do anything that was going to really disrupt it. We have, and I don't recall the phase, I think it was Phase 4, that we would actually go in and start removing the invasive species. We would, in fact, go through and upgrade the path, not with anything that's not native.
Yeah.
It would be like,
Asphalt or
gravel,
anything.
no asphalt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we will clean it up. The intent is to make it a healthy area.
On both sides there of the, where the water comes in? So on that, that side too?
I recall that being a designated area.
It's not in this?
The agency doesn't own it.
Yeah.
Square.
Yeah, that little square area is Gladstone, and this portion here would be the city. Do you recall that as being a...
It's not the Urban Renewal Agency, it's just the city that owns that?
You had asked for a map of ownership of those properties, and that should be attached to your agenda this evening.
Hard copy?
Okay.
Sucks.
Are you done?
It's on your...
Okay, so the answer was on that other side, yes, no, don't know? That's okay.
Not sure.
Renewal,
Yeah, it's...
except for
the agency.
the building.
Thank you.
Commissioner Neely.
At one, I think at one point in time, we called that something like a future study area or something, that we were not planning for it immediately.
Commissioner Neely?
I know this has come up before, but I want to clarify. When you're actually doing the landscape, have graded down to the 3-to-1 slope and so forth, the current pathway will, I presume, disappear, or at least portions of it. And is there going to be any temporary pathway established where people can use it? You know, scores, if not hundreds of people use this path every day now.
I think that what we would try to accomplish would be some kind of connectivity with where the road area will be, which would be the new Agnes Street, because in doing all the planting and doing the work, we don't want to have the conflicts of pedestrians there, but we could provide a temporary area that would be part of the road system. It does have a sidewalk that goes with it. That could be prepped, that could be used for a pathway during the interim period.
We did away with the construction of Agnes as being part of this in a subsequent amendment, as I recall.
No.
I don't mean permanently, but within...
I think that we have, engineers here? think we have half the street that was going to be accomplished there. So that would, in fact, be able to utilize that.
This is just a comment or recommendation, but if there could be it in signage or something else established late in the spring or something to inform a lot of the pedestrians just simply are not aware of what's going on, and I get public comments all the time about what's going on, and I try to respond to them as best as I can. But if in fact there is a good attempt to let the people that are actually using that pathways in terms of what's happening and what the alternatives might be during that period.
No, it's a very good idea, and we had that conversation yesterday that we would actually work in concert with the city and come up with a very formal statement that'll say what's happening, the timing, and actually put that at both ends of the trail and then maybe even in the center of the trail, so that, and with a number. The number would be to call Randy.
That's okay. This is a major this is a major point of interest to many people, and we do have a lot of people in the audience. I don't know if you're going to open this up to some comments or questions or not. I would suggest we do.
Mr. Nacita.
Okay. I would be interested in hearing public comment as well, but I do want to introduce another issue as we deliberate on this, or for folks to consider when we get to deliberations. Mr. Darrow put up on one of his slides the fact that we had reimbursed the consultants on this project for about $1.2 million, and we have not received all of what we purchased. During the Urban Renewal Commission retreat, I raised the request that we assemble all of this material and review it at a future Urban Renewal Commission meeting. Mr. Patterson brought a box of some materials and a memo from Mr. Darrow indicating that what we had, what we were being presented was only the tip of the iceberg of what had been worked on and generated by the consultants on this project. $1.2 million is a very, very, very large amount of money. That's our taxpayers' money, and we own that material. And I'm concerned that there's always a question of leverage, and we are in a position now to determine whether we're going to require that prior to approving an extension of time like this, that we also require that every single piece of material that the citizens of Oregon City paid for be rendered to the citizens of Oregon City. I'm also concerned, and the city attorney's here, and I'm going to throw it out here, about the waiver issue in the contract. That if we don't demand at this time that all of our materials be given to us under the DDA and this agreement to pay $1.2 million for this consultant's work, that we're waiving in the future our ability to acquire. And so if I'm to vote on this, well, I actually prefer that we continue this and get the materials and then decide, based on, the submission of all the materials that we paid for, that we approve this extension at that time, but I'm not sure I'm willing to do that before then.
Certainly, provisions of contracts can be waived. Typically, they tend to be ones that are time-sensitive or that can't be accomplished when it comes later. I'm not certain that not demanding all the documents would waive our ability to require them later. It might. This is the first time I've looked at that, and I'm trying to remember whether typically there's a boilerplate provision at the end about what waiver meant and whether you can, in fact, how waiver happens. So I'd have to look at the DDA to really fully answer your question. The question of how much of those documents you want. My memory, I know it was a couple meetings ago that there was that the box was brought in, that in discussing it briefly with the manager, that the box was the tip of the iceberg, but a lot of what wasn't in there were plans that had sent, the plans go through iterations, and the 9th or 10th plan And, do we really need, those first?
And my concern speaks directly to that. There may have been many iterations. I worked for a civil engineering firm. I've been through the iteration process. The fact is, though, we bill our clients for all those iterations. City of Oregon City, the people of Oregon City, this commission owns all those iterations, and I feel that that's our property, and we should have all that material.
I'd like to comment on that, if I might. Unfortunately, I was the one that chose the words that said tip of the iceberg. But what that didn't mean was that there was a whole bunch of extra work down underwater that couldn't be seen, that were reports or whatever. That was not the situation. The situation was that the tip of the iceberg was that that's the 10% that you get is only a small fraction of the work effort that went into it, but it's the part that actually synthesizes all the conclusions that resulted of the work that went by. And so there isn't, I put together everything that we had that was relevant to any future use that the city might want to make or the agency might want to make of that material.
It wasn't just what we had. Randy spent probably at least a month and a half with all of the consultants demanding additional materials, demanding that it be put onto disk, demanding that we have literally everything. And the essence of what I believe that we ended up with, even though Randy was running that particular effort, was everything that was available that shows what the final essence of it is. As I mentioned earlier, $600,000-$700,000 to the civil engineer. We all recall what the iterations were on this design with Kaiser, with floating homes, et cetera, et cetera. So we're certainly willing to go back to the consultants. They keep almost everything in archives and on disk, and we believe that we had gotten everything that was, in fact, was needed by the city. So there wasn't like, we'll give you a little bit, we won't give you something later. If in reviewing anything that you want, we can go back to these consultants and ask them for something specific. But we believe that we've actually delivered everything.
Mr. Neely?
Cita said something, and I can't recall what my response is going to be to it because it's evolved from that particular point. The point is, if for some reason you cannot advance on this project for some unforeseen reason, we own that. We own those plans. We own those documents. And
Exactly.
There's no issue. But I'm speaking to my attorney. There's no issue, is there?
No.
I thought you said you weren't sure that the waiver issue was applicable or inapplicable.
I mean, what I don't know is whether, waiving the demand to produce them now, we waive the right to demand them later. That's what I've got to go back look at. My understanding is that as part of it, as part of the DDA, and maybe I should, instead of saying my memory and see, do we have a copy of the DDA to, that in paying the $1 million, we own it. Now, do we waive the right to get the property that we owned because we didn't demand it when we purchased it? It's conceivable. I don't think it's likely. I still think we own it and we'd be able to do it. But do we waive the right to ask them to get that to us? I don't think we do. Let me see what we can.
Suggest an easy solution. We're willing to grant anything that you want. Just a one-page document would say that there is no waiver. If we, in fact, require something later, it'll be a mandate on us to get it for you. So I'm more than willing to do that. That way we don't have to worry about what waivers here or there.
That'd be satisfactory to me.
Mr. Neely?
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. We can condition this request, right? Yes. And that was actually what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just as a
Mr. Patterson.
a matter of fact, the approvals they've received, the land use approvals, does indicate that they have to provide a temporary bicycle and pedestrian path during the construction phase here, so that's just it.
Okay, what are the next steps? We need a motion here, or?
We need to hear the public comment.
We have the motion before with the public comment?
I don't want to have
Need
a
it so
motion before
moved,
the
but I
comment.
don't know if we need it.
Do we have any public
A
comment?
motion to have public comment?
Oh, that wasn't it. That wasn't what I said.
What motion were you inquiring regarding?
We're gonna do the public comment right now.
He was wondering if he needed a motion or not. I don't think we do.
Where is that on my, Mr. O'Brien?
Before Mr. O'Brien starts, Mr. Glassman has your answer here.
Yeah, and what we've got is 8.6 of the DDA says, the Phase 1 and 2 work being performed on the shooting parcel shall be owned by the agency. So, the ownership is ours. Then we've got in the general provisions, 11.3, failure of either party at any time to require performance of any provision of this agreement shall not limit the party's right to enforce the provision. So, we don't waive the right to go back and get them to the extent we can.
Mr. O'Brien, if you'll state your name and the city you reside in, and then you have 3 minutes on the clock here. So.
Tom O'Brien, live in Oregon City. Dear Commission members, the Clackamas Cove project looks more similar to the round at Beaverton with each passing day. This project has been underway, depending on who you listen to, for at least 4 years. Once again, this commission is being requested to amend the DDA and to extend the contingency period for an additional 3 months. Turtles seem to be able to make greater progress at the Cove than does Pacific Property Search. PPS was recruited due to their presumed ability to get the job done, hopefully on time. I must say I'm very, very impressed with their graphics presentation. I did not know we could get a sternwheeler and those huge sailboats into the Cove, but evidently we can. It's unfortunate that they don't have the capability of finding program, project, timeline software, because their timelines are abominable. Anyone who runs projects is totally aware that you must provide upfront consideration for delays and other contingencies that should avoid contract extensions. It's been voiced several times this evening by Commission members that the citizens of Oregon City don't know what's going on out there. It's another example of poor communication. I'd have a greater degree of trust in our political leaders were they to admit when a poor decision has been made. I recommend that you not make yet another poor decision by amending the current DDA. That would allow you perhaps to move forward addressing the needs of the city instead of pursuing impossible dreams. Thank you.
Mr. Egger?
Good afternoon. Paul Edgar, Oregon City. And thank you, Commission members. I have in front of me a document that I know all of you were emailed from the Northwest Environmental Defense Center. And I had an opportunity also to go to the DEQ and spend some time discussing with them a little bit about what was happening and what their thoughts were. But what I really see now is an opportunity for us to continue this discussion out, not vote on it today, much like what Commissioner Nocita has suggested. There's so many contingencies over and above what has been glossed over in beautiful graphics. Again, I think they are beautiful. But what is obvious is that the 1200C permit is not going to be arrived at quickly. In fact, if I understand what they said and what I, without them really saying it for themselves, but it looks like that they want to start over on the whole environmental recommendations. What is there is not acceptable. It appears to the whole idea of cutting the trees. If you read into here where they start talking about in this document that you can look at and read yourself, that this is a take, a net take. This is something that now all of a sudden you have the best legal beagles protecting the environment, looking over the shoulder of Oregon City, and it's like opening up Pandora's box. So what the lid has been opened, and from this point on, every single thing that this city does, not only with the Cove, but virtually everything, where they see some degree of negligence, lack of responsible thinking. Well, we know that when you start cutting these trees that shade the water, that protect endangered species, fish, salmonoids, and steelhead, we heard when the Oregon Department of Fish and Game came before us and told us that we can maybe say in a scientific term, a swag, that 1/3 of the endangered salmon fry coming down the Clackamas River go into the Cove and they gain strength and they eat the natural hatchings from the trees of the mayflies and other important fish, and they see this stuff happening. Well, without those trees, that doesn't happen. And what was said here in this document, it cannot be glossed over, is that this is a net take. And as the gentleman from the DEQ said, are they going to be planting 30, 40, 50-foot Douglas firs right along the bank there?
Mr. Edgar, I think your time's...
Well, I just hope that you gentlemen read this, gentlemen and women, realize that we've opened up Pandora's box, and please read this whole document on all of the DEQ requirements there, and it really spells out that we got to start over. Thank you.
Is that all the public comment? Mr. Crocker, or Commissioner Crocker?
Are we close to? I appreciate the public comment, appreciate civic property coming down. I think, I just want to take a step back here. I think we're losing sight of the forest for the trees, and we're getting into this minutia of all this stuff, but I wanted to, seems like it's been so long we've talked about this kind of big picture. So if I could just gently revisit from my recollection, I'm going to need help from some people as to the overall pluses and minuses of doing this deal, of making this thing happen. So I know some of the minuses are we're going to lose some cottonwood trees. We're going to inconvenience some fish for a few years until any new trees grow. They won't be able to rest there in that shade. They'll have to find somewhere else. Help me out with some of the other inconveniences. Some bad stuff. We're going to have equipment in there. There's going to be some traffic, minor traffic stuff. Now with the positives, and these are just the ones I can remember. We're going to turn a blighted, unmarketable, hardly usable piece of waterfront property into an amazing public-private crown jewel for Oregon City. We're going to generate how many millions of dollars of tax increment?
1.9, at least, probably, maybe higher than that by the time it's said and done.
1.9?
1.9 in the beginning, and it grows from that point.
How many jobs are we thinking that this is going to provide?
Construction jobs are estimated at roughly 475. I think permanent jobs, I'd have to look back at that figure. I can dig that out here quickly, and then you have the spin-off effect. So all told, with created jobs, spin-off jobs, you're looking somewhere between 800 and a little over 1,000 jobs.
Okay. How much, once this is all done, you get the new jobs, the new people, there's new taxes created, there's new business created, how much money can we estimate is going to be provided for the schools in Oregon City?
Yeah, in fact, actually, I attended the CIC the other evening, and, I think there is perhaps a failure to understand the total impacts, because a lot of the focus on this has been towards property taxes. And again, when you look at the city of Oregon City, property taxes only comprise 15% of the budget. So all total revenues looking at is you do have property taxes, you have income taxes, and again, that's the major source that finance schools. You have water and sewer revenues, and those will be, I'm in the process of calculating those, but just looking at the apartments and the condos, when that's fully developed, you're probably looking in the neighborhood of a couple $100,000 a year. There's franchise fees with 747 citizens, and that's roughly looking at the condos at 1.75 citizens per apartment and 2.4 per condo you'll be generating franchise or state shared revenues off of that. That's going to run, I think that's about 100,000 as I recall coming to Oregon City. Again, that's gas tax, that's cigarette tax, liquor tax, and revenue sharing. Then you have other things such as systems development charges. You have construction excise tax that will be generated off these buildings that go for school development. So overall, I think, we get focused on one little aspect of this thing when in fact the benefits in terms of revenues are quite significant from a number of sources. In addition to that, we've always believed this will lead to other development. I think that's one reason why you're seeing some of the activity beginning at the Oregon City Shopping Center. Those people who live there, too, will also use other parts of Oregon City. That helps support business because, again, without critical mass, the restaurants we have struggle. So I think those benefits go far beyond that. And I think, you have to balance the things we're talking about in terms of impacts with also what that means to a community and just trying to finance the things that we have. One of the concepts that seemed to be somewhat of, new the other evening at the CIC is, again, and Commissioner Neely has stated this on a number of occasions, I don't know if it's sank into folks, is today without a certain level of growth for Oregon City, and that in the neighborhood of 2.5% to 3%, is we cannot maintain the service levels we have today, which means we will have to cut service if we don't have that growth. Now, one can argue that's a bad thing, but that's the Oregon financial system. That is how you fund cities and make those grow. So without that, Oregon City's got some issues just trying to maintain what we have. Now, you got to, in terms of having that growth, not only do you have to do it in a way that you can continue to provide existing services to residents, but then also you have to provide it for those new residents as well. So that's why some of those impacts are greater than that.
Okay, so we have, let me keep going here. So jobs, potentially 800 to 1,000. Additional revenue for schools, potentially $500,000 a year. We're going to plant some new trees that are probably better than cottonwoods to be near the water. We're going to provide an amazing public spaces, including new walking paths, potentially an outdoor amphitheater, and a water sports complex that will draw citizens not only from Oregon City but from other neighboring cities as well. We will provide new residents who are living down near the downtown core that can frequent our downtown restaurants, shops, and vendors. And I think maybe most importantly, we could potentially be creating some amazing positive publicity for Oregon City. I mean, it could create some amazing publicity for, like you said, new development, and for citizens to take a second look about, becoming part of Oregon City. So I just sometimes I'm a small business owner, and I know we can tend to get caught up in the minutia, but if we just take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, look, let's look at the big picture here. In whole, in totality, is this a bad thing or is this a good thing? And we can nitpick and argue all we want over these little things like, can we limb trees or can we not limb trees? Or is it a sediment fence, or is it a construction fence, or is it, do we own the documents or we do not own the documents? And, you know, everything needs to be above board, and I'm totally cool with that, but, I mean, let's take a step back and look at the whole big picture 10 years from now. Are we going to be worried about a sediment fence not being in the right place, or are we going to be happy with the decisions that the city leaders and the Urban Renewal Commission made about making an amazing investment in something like this that's been in the works for not 4 years, but for 20 years since the city started acquiring that property around the cove. So that's all I wanted to say. I didn't want to nitpick anything. I just wanted us to take a deep breath and look at the big picture.
Let me also indicate that Mr. Dillon has indicated, too, is one of the issues we're working on here is working towards the build-out of the regional center. In doing that, too, moves us closer to funding from other sources that helps us bring light rail to Oregon City. But also just following up on your comments, and this is the question that the Commission has as well as the community has. Any development project like this, you're going to run across stop, starts, a lot of different issues, and this has really been difficult because of just the site. At some point, you have to decide whether you want to make this happen, everyone pulls together to try to overcome obstacles, or we can continue to throw out obstacles, and you don't get things done. And I think that's kind of been the history of Oregon City. So the question now is, do we want to move forward? And yeah, there's issues that we're going to have to continue to work on. This question, can we come together to move it forward, or do we want to find reasons to stop it? And that's, I think, where we're at today.
Mr. Neely.
A couple things. Just one observation. Better trees than cottonwoods. Cottonwoods inhabit this area because, in fact, cottonwoods do very well in areas that are prone to flooding and so forth. And the reason you've got them there is because they reestablished themselves after major flood events. However, this is not a place where you're going to have high-velocity water, and I think you can have other trees besides cottonwood. But I think the big positive there isn't what trees are going in. They're going to be indigenous trees. The thing is that we're taking a limited riparian area that is of poor quality, and we're going to quadruple it or quintuple it with an area that's of good riparian quality. So that's the positive. You're really talking about development improvements, but in fact the natural habitat is going to be improved. There's a time factor there. That's going to take a period of those for those trees to grow. But those trees that are there, which are very limited, have been growing there, I think, for 40 or 50 years to get to that point in a poor quality area. I think we're ahead maybe for another 40 or 50 years having an area that's 4 or 5 times the size in terms of riparian habitat. That is a far higher quality riparian habitat than what we have.
Mr. Norris.
If you're ready for a motion, I'd like to make one. I appreciate Commissioner Crocker's comments about the big picture, because I think that's where we are. I know that there will be questions all the way along about things in the project, because it's a very complex project, and this is economic times that we've never experienced before, so things are different. So I think it's fully logical to both have a mechanism for asking questions which don't sound like deal breakers, where we just simply have that kind of exchange, and secondly, that I think they need all the time that they require to make sure they get it right, to make sure that they are able to do the pieces of the project that need to be done. So I have no problem with granting this amendment, and I move that we do grant the request for amendments to extend the contingency period from April 15th to July 15th for those sections listed.
May I ask a question before the second? Because I'd be willing to second it, but I did want to find out from our attorney whether we needed to condition that based on Commissioner Nacita's concerns. It sounded like we did not have to do so.
Not anymore.
I don't believe you do need to do so. You certainly can add a condition if you'd like, but I believe we have all the rights we need to have those documents.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. We have now Commissioner Nacita.
I'd like to offer an amendment that will make me comfortable voting for this extension, and because it seems that everybody's comfortable with it anyway. I'd like to add 2 conditions. One, that we receive the one-page assurance that Mr. Darrow mentioned, and 2, that we include in this resolution motion that no limbing or tree removal will take place prior to the end of the nesting season.
I'm going to accept that as a second.
No, the amendment has to have a second.
Okay.
I'll move the second. I'll second the
Then we have to vote on the
amendment.
amendment first. Okay. So are there any more, is there discussion on the amendment?
What is the one-pager?
I missed
What
it.
is-
The
what
question
they
of the waiver
described.
that Mr. Darrow offered, I think that
He
was a
offered
good
it.
idea.
Any other discussion? Okay, could we have a vote on the,
You want to say something? Or no?
I'm
I
requesting.
think if you could explain a little more, just to make sure that we know what everybody knows what's being
The
done.
idea would be for us to present, and we'll draft that jointly with the city, but that if, in fact, there is any need for any additional work, or to expand what we've already given you, or to have us work with the consultants to bring anything else into that package which has already been delivered, that we will do that as a matter of course.
and Commissioner Nacidi, you're on, okay? You're
I'm sorry, that was for my motion,
done?
my amendment, yes.
Then was there another question? Any other discussion on the amendment? Shall we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Neely? Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? No. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker? Commissioner Peterson? Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Aye.
And Chair Slack.
Aye, so that would be 8 in favor and 1 no. The amendment passes. Now we'll vote on the, or do we have further discussion on the motion? If not, shall we call the vote?
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? No. Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Aye.
Commissioner Crocker? Aye. Commissioner Peterson? Aye. Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. So that would be 8 in favor and 1 against. Motion passes. Commissioner Norris.
Since Commissioner Smith didn't speak, may I ask the reason for your no?
I voted against the original DDA, and I voted, which includes that original contingency, and I am not going to approve an extension of a contingency I voted against.
Commissioner Nacidi, did you? He's off.
I was
Okay.
all done.
All right. Okay, next on the agenda is, well, I guess that takes care of all of 5A, does it not? So we're on 5B, minutes of the February 17th, 2010 regular meeting.
Move approval?
Is there any discussion? The vote, please.
Commissioner Neely? Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Nocita? Commissioner Crocker? Commissioner Peterson? Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Walters? Chair Slack?
That would be 9 in favor and 0 opposed. That motion carries. And we also have the minutes of the May 15th, 2009 retreat.
For approval?
Is the only discussion I have on there is a minor point, and that retreat was actually chaired by Mayor Norris, and I think it shows on there as being chaired by Slack. So that revision, so because it was a city commission retreat where Urban Renewal was invited. So okay.
Yes, and actually, so the title is...
Oh, yeah, also on here it says 5/15/09.
And it says Urban Renewal Commission Retreat, and it wasn't.
Okay, so we're essentially voting on it's a city commission. Well, should this be something that is actually voted by the city commission?
It should be voted by the City Commission, not here. Yeah, it's in the wrong place.
Okay, shall we just pull it back and let the city commission? Okay. Commissioner Crocker.
I forgot to add this to the future agenda items, but I wanted to talk about I know Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Walters were working on the storefront improvement grant stuff. And I know we gave it a March 1st deadline. And
We're looking at that meeting on the 17th for that.
great, thank you.
And city manager's report. Mr.
Yes,
Patterson?
Mr. Chair, I have two items. First of all, just again want to mention, you had requested, actually Commissioner Neely requested a ownership of the properties at the Cove, and you have that this evening, so if you have any questions on that, we'll be glad to try to address those. Also, you have attached there, I know a couple of you had asked for the scope of work from Mr. Leland in regards to the north end. You have his initial draft of that. He's asking if you have any comments or concerns on that, and then they'll put that in final form, and we can bring that back to you for your consideration. They haven't put a price on it yet, waiting, for any input that you may have and looking at that. So if you'll look over that, if you have some, you want to pass those on to me, I can pass those on through to them so I can put that in a form that you can take it up and consider at a future meeting.
Mr. Walters?
When would you like to have our comments by?
If you want it for the meeting of the 17th, I would need those early next week. If you want to go into April, sometime here in the next couple of weeks for that. But you do have the transition you're going to have to work through.
In all the paperwork, I'm not sure I received that, but...
It's at your, and I will, you have it this evening at your place, and we will email that out to you as well.
Great.
No, it's on the...
It was uploaded in the wrong format, I'm sorry. We'll email it out to you.
Email it to us,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, great. Commissioner Norris?
May I suggest that we hold that till April, because I think that because of our time, we always have such a short time period. I'd like to be able to spend time on those design storefront standards, just the one topic thing.
Commissioner Nocita?
Before we break, I would like to ask Mayor Norris what the subject matter is going to be of the executive committee meeting that you proposed.
Executive committee meeting?
You at the beginning of the meeting, you said there was going to be an executive committee meeting.
What's it about?
What?
You did it at the beginning of this.
You said before we talked about the rivers in here, you wanted to have the...
Oh, the executive committee meeting. Oh, sorry, I was thinking executive session. Sorry, I've already moved on to another meeting. Sorry, yes. The executive committee, I think it would be good for us to, we have not met, and I think it's good to meet actually prior to each meeting. And I think before we, I think one of the topics is how we deal with questions that we're getting on the projects. And I thought that it would be good for us to talk in executive session about how to structure that
executive committee.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm already up. And sorry. Okay, focus. Executive committee to discuss some process things. And we have integration of the new managers, so just sort of to outline some process steps to bring here as a recommendation. That was my kind of consistency.
I would have concerns with that. I don't see why that discussion can't be done in the open.
Well, it's
I think the
just
intent was to
process.
have some kind of unified proposal that we can come forward to the group with.
discussion.
I'm still concerned with that. I object to, a small group of this body meeting outside the public eye and outside the eye of the other members of the group.
Such as the design review committee and the other subcommittees that we have.
This is a lot more sensitive than the design committee.
So part of the bylaws of the executive committee.
Yeah.
And I think there's some concern in the public about that.
I think the purpose, and again, I haven't had a chance to discuss that, is to try to put something in a format so that you can have a discussion. That's why the bylaws were set up that way. It's not any intention to exclude the commission, but, you get into some interesting debates and probably even some arguments among yourself when things are just thrown on the table without any structure in terms of what the issue is, without any thought placed to it, and how you're going to go about debating it.
I have a proposal. My sensitivity of this is regarding the meeting that took place on January 26th, with half of this Urban Renewal Commission present and half of us, some of us not even, called about the meeting taking place. Mayor Norris is proposing this meeting, I think, before the next Urban Renewal Commission meeting, at which the rivers is going to be discussed, the DDA, and I'm concerned that this executive committee meeting may just conveniently to decide something regarding the rivers outside of the public eye, and it would give me confidence, and I think give the public confidence, just either do stuff in the open or not try to make some decision regarding the river that's going to be sprung on all of us on the 17th.
Mr. Neely, I think, was next, so.
Okay.
My statement is simply that we as a body would meet and discuss any proposals that came from it, could accept them, reject them, alter them in any form we want. I assume we're going to have their recommended format well ahead of time so that we actually be able to review it and critique it. So I don't see there's an issue. It's just like every neighborhood association I'm aware of has a steering committee. And then the steering committee brings back their recommendations to the neighborhood association meeting. I don't see any difference in that process than I do with the one that we have here.
We do not have the ability to make decisions, and the executive committee has met several times in planning urban renewal meetings over the past year. So it's, I think, what to do and to kind of address the agenda.
Mr. Chair, once again, too, I'm kind of lost. The meeting that keeps getting referred to, and this is from a staff perspective, sometimes I don't know what I'm supposed to do. As all of you recall, is we discussed that staff was going to be meeting with the rivers, talking about their design at the retreat. The committee, and Commissioner Nocita was there, was concerned that there were more views there and thought that that should be expanded to have members of the Urban Renewal Committee. We agreed to that. You even talked to who would attend that meeting, and that's the meeting that's held. I don't understand why that's a concern.
We did that all together.
And if you would like, I'd be glad to broadcast that up here.
I did review the tape. The city manager said explicitly that night, we will call some of you. And anybody can go review the tape. I will even email out the specific hour and minute that segment took place. It was always planned to include only some of this board and exclude others.
It was a night meeting. That was at the retreat.
It was at the retreat. It was at the retreat, and we discussed who the members of the committee would be.
Particularly Commissioner Walters, because she was the one who raised some of the concerns.
Yeah, and we all agreed that we would expand that and that those people should be there, talk about the time, logistics.
Let me ask the question point blank. Is the river going to be a subject of this executive committee meeting that's planned? Let me just put it out there.
That's actually, at this point, that would probably be premature, because until we get some type of response back from CenterCal, I don't know that we have anything to discuss. I'm going to be contacting them in the next couple of days to see if they have reviewed that DDA. I plan to have Mr. Janik at the March 17th meeting, if we have a meeting of the minds, to walk you through the DDA, because he is the one who has been working on that. My understanding, just again from a very brief conversation of the executive committee, is talk more about process, how we deal with these issues. I think all of you are aware of some of the issues that came up last week with some of the concerns that have been raised, and though that's fine, the question is, how do we have those discussions? I think one of the things that you're going to struggle with, if we don't have a very defined process of how we raise questions and deal with them, you're going to find it harder and harder to work with developers, because they will not want to go through some of the stuff that keeps coming up from Orange City. Stuff that is real, I don't know any developer that don't want to deal with it, but some of the stuff we deal with, frankly, where it comes from and what it is a wonderment. And I think that's what they're reacting kind of negatively to. So
I will take that as a positive answer that, yes, in fact, it is the intent of the executive committee to talk about the Rivers Mall out of the public eye and out of the eye of this commission as a whole.
Not what I said.
What he said.
Commissioner Walters, you had your...
Yeah, I'm sorry that this has become kind of, I think, a little bit of a misunderstanding. I guess I was a bit confused when it came up in the retreat as to what the meeting was and what the purpose of it was, and I think it did kind of migrate from maybe what it had originally been called for, which my understanding was that it was to take a look at the new design, and that I think it was Dan Durrentlaw who originally had requested it, because there have been some significant changes from what we had seen previously, and I think that because of some sensitivity with respect to one of the prospective tenants, it was intentional to keep this meeting that took place to present information to ensure that it was not subject to the open meetings law and keep it legal in that regard. I guess I think.
But isn't that a problem right there? Problem?
May I finish?
Sure.
So this brings up the question of, how do we make sure that everybody gets all of the information, and also to make sure that we do have a process for dealing with some of the questions. I personally have quite a few reactions to what I saw, in addition to some of the concerns that have come up more recently. And so, this would be an opportunity for us to kind of, have some open discussions to try to vet out some good ideas, put them all on the table, and bring them back without having to, disclose some of the information that isn't available to be publicly disclosed at this time.
Well, I want to give the big picture here, to use Commissioner Crocker's words. What we're facing now is that some of this board on January 26th has seen the revised plans for the rivers. The public and the board in open session has not seen those revised plans. And I'm fully expecting, because this is the way Oregon City has worked, that we will be presented with that design and a development agreement at our next Urban Renewal Commission, and the very strong possibility that that same night that development agreement will be approved. And that was the intent of having some of the Urban Renewal Commission see it and behind closed doors. So all those balls could be rolling in place to spring that on us and have the public cut out of any critique, any comment, and just railroad that the night of March 17th. And that's what I'm fully expecting to happen.
Commissioner Crocker?
Just to alleviate any of Commissioner Nocita's concerns, that wasn't brought up at all at that meeting. What was brought up was there was concerns brought up at the retreat that we wanted to look at, and there was some potential tenants that they could not let the public know about, because if the tenants, these big potential box store tenants, found out that the information had leaked that they were looking at this location, it may jeopardize part of the deal. This was not a meeting to get the ducks in a row, to railroad through the Urban Renewal Commission. I want you to assure you of that. That was never discussed. We looked at the things, and frankly, a number of us brought up issues that we saw with the revised plans, and I think they were still revising them. I have no idea. It seems like there's this conspiracy theory thing going on, and if there's a conspiracy, I was there, and it flew under the radar of me. So I don't know where this is coming from, but there was no conspiracy going on there.
Mr. Chair, too, one of the issues, too, and there seems to be some confusion here, is the process that you'll go through is very much like we've gone through with the code. First, you're going to need to look at the development agreement. Development agreement does not have the plans. It talks about certain things that they need to meet, and those are the benchmarks we've talked about. It talks about how the financing of it works. It talks about kind of the phasing and the exchange of dollars. Then they have to go through land use approvals. They have to go through a detailed development plan. And kind of what precipitated that meeting is what our staff's been working with, is trying to work with the developer to make certain modifications to the plan that I think everyone has seen. It's once been there. And we were going to be meeting with them. Commission expressed some concerns and wanted to express those viewpoints, and we said, fine. I mean, and that's part of this issue with the executive committee. We need to talk about how we do that. Because from a staff perspective, if the commission wants to meet every time we do basic stuff like that, we need to kind of work through that, how we're going to do it. If not, if you want us to do that stuff, kind of get that ready so you can look at it. But hopefully with your new manager, there'll be maybe a different level of trust factor, because I know there's some relationships here that are issues, but even if you approve the DDA next time, and that's not what the plan is, you still have to go through and talk about the design and approve land use, detailed development plans, all that stuff still has to come, just as we went through with this process.
To hear Mr. O'Brien.
We open to the public, so. Did you want to make a comment?
You need to come.
A brief comment. In terms of public perception, I think that it's very important that anyone who's representing the citizens of this city, anytime they meet, should be not thought to be meeting in secret, conducting business in secret. Public perception is extremely important. I was shocked tonight by Commissioner Neely's comments about the fact that he had sent several emails to the developers. He is, in fact, the individual who sent me an email about 3 years ago saying, I cannot respond or dialogue with you about a subject that is going to come up at a public meeting. So if he can't communicate with the citizens, how can he communicate with others involved? I don't understand the difference.
Thank you.
I'm going to respond to that.
Okay. Mr.
Neely. I send emails very frequently to pose questions that I intend to pose at a public meeting, which is exactly what I did this time. I don't see any reason for hitting anybody with information that they can't answer when they're in the meeting. There are questions that I raised. There weren't comments on what should or should not happen. I asked specific questions. I didn't want them to come in here and say, well, I'm prepared to answer those questions. They were the 3 questions that I addressed here, and that's what I did.
Okay,
I don't apologize for it one iota.
Are we, Commissioner Nocita?
I'd like to ask Commissioner Crocker point blank, will you pledge not to vote for any development agreement on the rivers on March 17th without giving the public at least a month to review it and have public comment on it?
No, the public, we're an elected body, some of us are appointed to represent the public, and we need to go and talk to them. And frankly, the public that I talk to are all in favor of the rivers, and they're all in favor of the cove. It's just they are the non-vocal majority, so they don't show up here and tell us we're doing a great job. What we hear from is the vocal minority. If you go around and you take a survey of all of Oregon City, what they say is, we want this. We want the jobs. We want the increment. We want Oregon City to improve its image. We want the tax revenue. We want better schools. That's what they want, and that's what these are going to provide for us. Now, if there's real issues with it, I won't vote for it. But no, I'm not going to pledge to not vote and wait for a month. No, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that.
Thank you for putting that on the record.
Can we get to our point of wrapping up so that the City Commission could...
We've got another meeting.
Okay, yeah. And then this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.